Hello, my name is Cade Martin, and I'm doing my speech over do video games cause violence? I believe that they don't, and I've collected the evidence to support my claim. Many people believe that violent video games are the cause of a lot of violence among younger people and older groups. I'm here to show you that that's not true. In a world that's full of lots of violence, people will look for anything to pin the blame on. One of the most unsupported claims is that violent video games cause people to be violent. There's plenty of evidence to show that this is not true. One reason that people blame video games is because some of the violence in these video games resemble the virtual violence. A good example of that is Grand Theft Auto. There's lots of stealing cars. You can beat up people, steal money, and they automatically put those real life events in and say that video games caused them. And it's an easy scapegoat. People are lazy. They don't want to go look for the actual problem. They want to find something easy, and it's easy to blame video games. And shooting started to pick up in the late 90s. 1999 was a big shooting, Columbine Massacre. And at the time, violent video games were very popular. You had titles such as Doom and Call of Duty coming out, and people loved them. They were playing them all the time. So people automatically put these shootings were caused by these video games, and it's unsupported and it's not true. People believe that video games are the reason, but don't do the research to see if any of it's true. Here's some things that show why it shouldn't be blamed. There's no evidence to back up the claim. No one's done the research to support their claims that it's causing violence. So 70% of high schoolers play violent video games out of all high schools. And 20% of the school shooters that shoot up schools or try to have played violent video games. So you can't blame violent video games if a large chunk of the people who are committing these violent acts are not playing these video games. Video games do not cause that violence, but how do they lose the bad reputation that they have gained? The answer is to show some more research about the people who are committing these violent acts, and to show some of the research that people are making to show that they're not violent. Research has been done over a large group of teens that play video games, and none of them has showed any anger issues or committed any violent acts because of these. This shows that these video games are not causing this. It's not doing these to these teenagers. They need to look at the mental health issues with the people who are committing these violent acts. And a rise in popularity of violent video games has caused teen violence to decrease. So you can't say that violence is rising when these games come out when it's obviously decreasing. And studies have shown that, they've covered up studies that have proven that there's no effect from video games. And that just it shows that they're trying to find a way to blame these video games. People make the claim that video games cause violence, but there's plenty of research that show this isn't true. People like to claim that violent video games do cause violence, but mostly because that's what social media says. But if they did the research, it would show that it does not. To summarize everything that I've said, video games do not cause violence, and there's plenty of research to support this claim. People need to quit hopping on the bandwagon that violent video games cause violence and start believing for themselves. They need to go do the research themselves and actually put in the effort to see if this is true. And the people that don't believe it need to show other people how video games do not cause this violence. Thank you for listening to my speech.